Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us here at Sun News. A federal court ruling has just been issued, and it says that if you are becoming a Canadian citizen, you should be allowed to wear a niqab. So this is one of those ongoing debates that is happening in all corners of our country, and we're going to take it even further. So to do that, I'm joined by our Sun News contributor, Attar Khan, and also joining us is Muniza Sheikh. She's a partner at Howard Levitt here in Toronto, and you represented the woman who was fighting this niqab ban, correct?
I did not represent her.
Oh, you did not represent her? Oh, my apologies. I did not represent
her, but the woman who did represent her, she's a friend of mine.
Okay, so you're very familiar with the file, nonetheless. Bottom line this for me, what has the federal court ruling said to a woman, a Muslim woman who wants to take her citizenship oath?
I guess the first thing I should say is, I mean, this is a really important issue, especially because of a lot of the hate that's being propagated against the Muslim community right now. I think the decision is timely, most certainly. And the decision actually, when I read it personally, I thought to myself, it's actually quite progressive. Mm-hmm. And the reason I thought it was quite progressive is it takes it a step further. So first and foremost, in the decision, it clearly states that, look, this policy actually violates the government's own immigration laws. And I'll talk about that in a second. But what I found even more interesting is it said, well, not only is there an issue with this policy, but implementing a policy like this could possibly create a situation where other women who wear the niqab or may not feel comfortable applying for citizenship. And that in and of itself really threatens the fabric of our Canadian society.
Okay, Attar, what was your response to the ruling?
Well, I found it kind of sad because I think actually the ban was a good idea, because I'm someone who is a former Salafi Muslim, and I found it, I've seen constantly the kind of manipulation that imams impose on women in order to make them wear niqab. And I have a clip here that shows a demonstration of that, where an imam is sort of sensationalizing the wearing of a niqab to the point where women internalize that this is a good thing and it's from God, and that I think this ban was actually trying to sort of prevent.
Okay, do we have that clip, Nelson? I think we do. Okay, let's take a look.
Or, in the case of the sister, she doesn't cover herself. She's wearing lipstick in the street. She's putting perfume on. She's working among the kuffar. And her husband is like her. And one day, she wake up and she puts on niqab. And she puts her full clothes on. No more lipstick. No more perfume. She doesn't talk to the men. She's not working anymore because she understands to keep her haya, to keep herself. She stays home and take care of her home.
Okay, so interesting rant, I suppose one would say. Muniza, I want to have you respond to that, because you're a beautiful Muslim woman sitting before me. You're wearing lipstick, and you do your hair and all of these things. I mean, all of these things that he was so negative and down upon. But you don't wear a hijab, niqab, burqa. You're not wearing any of those things.
I am not wearing any of those things. Thank you for noticing my lipstick.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But it's an interesting point that you make, because I do identify myself as a devout Muslim woman. And the problem with those sort of clips, and the problem with saying that, oh, well, if a woman chooses to wear the niqab, then she's being forced and oppressed, is it really doesn't recognize that there's a diversity within our religion. Sorry, I should say there's a diversity within the Muslim religion. So while I might certainly understand that certain women are told to wear the niqab, it really silences the Muslim women who want to wear the niqab. And it's quite ironic, because on one hand we're saying, well, these women are oppressed if they wear the niqab, and then we've got our ex-immigration minister saying that, well, they should take it off. So how do you remedy this, how do you remedy the fact that these women are supposedly being forced by, implementing a ban, a policy? I mean, it wasn't even a law or anything of that nature, which is frustrating.
This is a comment that we got from the spokesperson for Citizenship and Immigration Canada, Kevin Menard. One of the things he notes here, Attar, is that new citizens are obliged to confirm their identity when taking the oath of citizenship. So make some sense of the people that are watching us who, a lot of people are saying, how is this an issue? You're Canadian, you want to become a Canadian, take off the veil for that 5 minutes and then put it back on.
Yes, can you imagine the audacity that someone has to have? Coming into a new country, if I'm coming into a new country, I'm nervous. I want to get my citizenship ceremony over and done with and move on with my life. I'm not going to cause problems. But can you imagine the audacity of someone coming into a country and saying, the first thing I'm going to do when I come here, I'm going to sue the government. And because I want to bring my tradition or my this aspect of my religion that I would argue is quite backward. I want to bring that into this country, and I want to force it upon the law to mandate it. Even though I'm just a new citizen right now, just coming into this country.
This is a challenge, I think, even for the courts in general, though. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled 2 years ago that a woman, and I mean, you're a lawyer, so you'd appreciate this, that every Canadian, regardless of their religion, has the right to face their accuser. And the Supreme Court even kicked the can down the road and talked about specifically a woman who wanted to wear a niqab when she was testifying against 2 men who had allegedly sexually assaulted her. They sent it back down to the lower courts. And I guess I'm just wondering the wisdom of having these things fought out in a court system rather than, you know, when all of us Canadians can just have a rational, thoughtful discussion.
Well, I think one thing we need to be very clear about is, I mean, from her perspective, we're not talking about a law. This was simply a policy that was mandated. And later on, the federal government responded by saying, you know what, it wasn't even mandatory, it wasn't a law, and, you know, the judge, you know, presiding over the matter could have very well exercised his discretion and said, okay, well, you can take off the niqab. So the question then becomes, well, which one is it? Is it something that needs to be mandated? And I think then they were able to find some emails that had gone back and forth that essentially stated, no, we need this policy to be implemented. So I don't necessarily, I do disagree with what you're saying. I don't think that she's out to challenge anybody. And the reality is there's always going to be someone who finds, you know, aspects of somebody else's religion to be challenging. But to then say, well, you know, how could you possibly have the audacity to raise the issue? I think it opens up a can of worms, and it creates a situation where anyone could turn around and say, well, I don't believe what you're saying, or I don't believe this aspect of your religion. Remember, there's a charter to think about. So first of all, there's a freedom of expression, and secondly, the charter also gives you the right to exercise your religion in a manner that you see fit.
Is a niqab, hijab, burqa are they religious symbols?
For some women, absolutely. I think for a lot of women, you know, the niqab or the hijab, it represents modesty and how they choose to implement modesty in their own lives. And I know my personal interpretation in modesty as a practicing Muslim woman myself, for myself, is different. However, I have a number of friends who wear the hijab, none who wear the niqab, but it really is, you know, it's all about your interpretation of modesty. And what we can't have is we can't have the federal government dictate what defines modesty or what's an interpretation or what's an appropriate interpretation of that word. That's the biggest problem.
Last word, Athar.
When I was a Salafi Muslim, I wanted Sharia law implemented in certain areas of Ontario. Okay, they said no to me. That's what I think we need to say sometimes, is no to people that want to sort of bring laws and bring traditions and implement them into sort of policies that go against Canadian values. Okay,
well, this is an ongoing debate and great one. I want to thank both of you for joining me, Athar Khan and Manisa Sheikh, for discussing this. I don't think this is the last we're going to hear about it.